I sat in my cold, dark living room, stomach painfully empty. The electricity had been shut off yesterday. My refrigerator stood empty, except for half a jar of mayonnaise. My once beautiful home had fallen into disrepair. Despite receiving a $15,000 monthly pension from 40 years of dedicated hospital work, I hadn't bought groceries in weeks. My daughter-in-law, Tiffany, now controlled every penny. I trembled, wondering how I'd survive another night, when unexpectedly, my doorbell rang. I slowly made my way to the door, using the flashlight on my old cell phone to navigate the dark hallway. The arthritis in my knees made every step painful, but I managed. When I opened the door, the bright afternoon sunlight momentarily blinded me. "Mom? What's going on? Why is it so dark in here?" My heart leaped at the sound of my daughter Samantha's voice. I hadn't seen her in nearly 3 years. "The electricity was turned off yesterday," I admitted, embarrassed at the state of my home and my life. Samantha stepped inside, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. "Mom, why is there no food? You get a $15,000 pension every month." Before I could answer, there was another voice behind her. "I control every dollar she receives." My daughter-in-law Tiffany stood in the doorway, her expression smug, designer purse dangling from her arm. Samantha turned slowly, taking in Tiffany's expensive clothes and jewelry. Then, in a move that made my heart stop, Samantha deliberately removed her earrings. But before I explain what happened next, I should tell you how I got into this terrible situation. My name is Andrea Wilson. I worked as a nurse administrator for 40 years at Memorial General Hospital in Pittsburgh. I loved my job and was good at it, working my way up from staff nurse to eventually overseeing 5 departments. When I retired 3 years ago at 67, I had a substantial pension that should have allowed me to live comfortably for the rest of my days. My husband Harold and I had planned to travel, to visit all the places we'd put off seeing while raising our children and building our careers. Harold had been the love of my life since high school. We had 2 children, Jeffrey and Samantha. Jeffrey followed in my footsteps, becoming a physician, while Samantha became an attorney, practicing in California. 2 years ago, Harold died suddenly from a massive heart attack while gardening. One moment he was planting tomatoes, and the next he was gone. The grief was overwhelming. I felt lost without him, my partner of 48 years. Jeffrey and his wife Tiffany were a comfort during those dark days. They lived just 20 minutes away, and Tiffany especially seemed eager to help. She was younger than Jeffrey by almost 10 years, a pretty blonde woman with a background in accounting. They had been married for 5 years, and while we weren't particularly close, I was grateful for her support after Harold passed. Samantha had wanted me to move to California to be near her, but I resisted. This was the home Harold and I had shared for 30 years. My friends were here, my garden, my memories, and of course, Jeffrey and Tiffany were nearby. Or so I thought. 6 months after Harold died, I came down with severe pneumonia. I had never been so sick. The infection was resistant to the first round of antibiotics, and I ended up hospitalized for nearly 2 weeks. When I was discharged, I was still very weak, barely able to take care of myself. It was during this time that Jeffrey suggested Tiffany help manage my finances temporarily. "Mom, you need to focus on getting better," he said, sitting at my kitchen table while Tiffany prepared tea. "Tiffany is great with money. She can handle your bills and everything until you're back on your feet." It seemed reasonable. I was having trouble concentrating, and the thought of dealing with paperwork exhausted me. Tiffany smiled warmly as she set a cup of tea in front of me. "It would be no trouble at all," she assured me. "I manage all our finances anyway, and this way you won't have to worry about missing any payments while you recover." I agreed, signing the paperwork they brought me without reading it carefully. A decision I would come to regret deeply. What I didn't realize was that I had given Tiffany power of attorney and access to all my accounts, not just bill-paying privileges. The very next day, Jeffrey dropped another bombshell. "Mom, I've been offered a position at Seattle General. We're moving next month." I stared at him in shock. "Next month? How long have you known about this?" He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. We've been discussing it for about 6 months. It's a great opportunity. 6 months. He had known for 6 months and never mentioned it. And just yesterday, he had arranged for Tiffany to handle my finances, knowing they would be leaving. But what about Tiffany helping me with my finances? I asked, confused. That's the good news, Jeffrey said, brightening. Tiffany's going to stay here until I get settled in Seattle. Her accounting firm is letting her work remotely for a few months, so she'll still be able to help you out. I looked at Tiffany, who nodded and smiled. Something felt off, but I was too weak to protest. Besides, this was my son and his wife. They loved me. They wanted what was best for me. Don't worry, Andrea, Tiffany said, patting my hand. I'll take care of everything. You just need to get better. I felt a flutter of unease, but pushed it away. How long will you stay before joining Jeffrey? Just a few months, she replied vaguely. Until you're completely recovered and can manage on your own again. Jeffrey left for Seattle 2 weeks later. I was still recovering, spending most of my days in bed or on the couch. Tiffany came by every few days, bringing groceries and checking on me. She would bring the mail, sort through bills, and handle everything financial. When I tried to ask about specific accounts or payments, she would wave away my concerns. Don't worry about any of that right now, she would say. Jeffrey and I agree, you just need to focus on getting well. I didn't like being dismissed, but I was too tired to argue. Besides, I told myself, this arrangement was temporary. Once I was better, I would take back control of my finances. Little did I know that Tiffany had no intention of ever relinquishing that control. By the time a month had passed, I was feeling much stronger. The pneumonia had cleared, and while I was still recovering some of my energy, I was able to take care of myself again. I mentioned this to Tiffany during one of her visits. I'm feeling so much better now, I said. I think I'm ready to start handling my own finances again. Tiffany was looking through my mail at the kitchen table. She didn't look up. That's great that you're feeling better, Andrea, but Jeffrey and I think it's better if I continue managing things for now. I frowned. But that was just supposed to be while I was sick. She finally looked at me, her expression concerned. The doctor said you need to avoid stress during your recovery. Besides, I've set up a new system that's working really well. What system? I asked. I've created a budget, she explained. I've set up automatic payments for all your bills, and I've started an investment portfolio with some of your pension money. This was the first I'd heard about investments. What kind of investments? Nothing for you to worry about, she said dismissively. But to keep everything organized, I think it's best if we implement an allowance system. An allowance? I repeated, stunned. For me? From my own money? Just to help you budget, she said quickly. I'll deposit $200 each week into your checking account for groceries and personal expenses. Everything else will be handled automatically. $200 a week from my $15,000 monthly pension? That didn't make sense. Even with all my bills, there should be much more available. That doesn't seem right, I protested. After bills, I should have several $1,000s each month. My pension is quite substantial. Tiffany's expression hardened slightly. There are a lot of expenses you're not considering, Andrea. Property taxes, insurance, healthcare costs, maintenance on this big house. Trust me, $200 a week is generous given your fixed income. Fixed income? My pension was more than most people's salaries. But Tiffany was already standing, gathering her designer purse. I need to run. I've got a work call in 20 minutes. We can discuss this more next time if you want. But whenever I tried to discuss it next time, she would deflect or say she was in a hurry. Eventually, I decided to go directly to the bank and check my accounts myself. I had always handled my own finances when Harold was alive. There was no reason I couldn't do so now. The next morning, I drove to Pittsburgh First National, where Harold and I had banked for decades. I approached a young teller named Brooke, whom I recognized. Good morning, Brooke. I'd like to check my account balances, please. Of course, Mrs. Wilson. I'll need your ID and your account password. I provided my driver's license, and tried the password Harold and I had always used. It didn't work. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson. That password seems to be incorrect. I tried several variations, but none worked. That's strange, I said. Could you just look up my balance using my ID? I'm afraid our policy requires the password for account inquiries, Brooke explained apologetically. You could speak with the manager about resetting it. I waited to speak with the manager, a man named Scott who had helped Harold and me many times over the years. He recognized me immediately. Mrs. Wilson, how are you? I was so sorry to hear about Harold's passing. Thank you, Scott. I'm having trouble accessing my accounts. It seems the password has been changed. Scott typed something into his computer. Yes, I see here that your account access was updated recently. Your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Tiffany Wilson, is now listed as having power of attorney and is the primary account manager. My stomach dropped. She has access to all my accounts? Yes, ma'am. She made quite a few changes to your account structure as well. Would you like me to go over those with you? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Tiffany. Andrea? Where are you? I stopped by the house and you weren't there. How did she know I wasn't home? I hadn't told anyone I was going to the bank. I'm running errands, I said vaguely. Are you at the bank? Her voice was sharp. I hesitated, surprised by her tone. Yes, I needed to check something. I'll be right there. Don't make any changes to the accounts. I've spent hours organizing everything. She hung up before I could respond. I looked at Scott, embarrassed. My daughter-in-law is on her way, I explained. Perhaps we should wait for her. Scott nodded, though he gave me a strange look. Within 15 minutes, Tiffany arrived, perfectly put together in an expensive-looking suit. Andrea, you should have told me you wanted to check your accounts, she chided as if I were a child. Then she turned to Scott, extending her hand. Tiffany Wilson, I have power of attorney for Andrea's finances. Scott shook her hand. Yes, Mrs. Wilson. Andrea was having trouble accessing her accounts. I've changed the passwords for security purposes, Tiffany explained smoothly. There have been so many scams targeting seniors lately. Andrea, we should go. I have a lunch appointment in half an hour. I felt myself being steered out of the bank before I could protest. Once in the parking lot, Tiffany's friendly demeanor vanished. What do you think you're doing? She demanded. I wanted to check my accounts, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's my money, Tiffany. You signed over financial management to me, Andrea. I've been investing your money to secure your future. Do you know how much time I'm spending handling your affairs? And then you go behind my back like this? I wasn't going behind your back, I protested. I just wanted to know where my pension money is going. $200 a week doesn't seem right. Tiffany's expression softened slightly. I understand you're concerned. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? I'll show you the investment portfolio I've set up. You'll see that everything is being handled properly. I agreed, feeling slightly reassured. That evening, I drove to Tiffany's house, a large, newly built home in an upscale neighborhood. I noticed she had recently purchased expensive new furniture. When I commented on it, she smiled. Jeffrey and I have been doing well with our investments, she said. Speaking of which, let me show you what I've been doing with your portfolio. She showed me several professional-looking spreadsheets on her computer, filled with numbers and financial terms I didn't fully understand. She talked rapidly about dividend yields and capital appreciation. It all sounded impressive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. So, where exactly is my pension money going each month? I asked. Most of it is being reinvested, she explained. After paying your bills, property taxes, insurance, and setting aside money for home repairs, the rest is going into these investment accounts. Could I have a copy of this information? I asked. Of course, she said smoothly. I'll email everything to you tomorrow, but the email never came. When I called Jeffrey to express my concerns, his response shocked me. Mom, Tiffany is doing you a huge favor managing your money. She's a professional accountant. You need to trust her. But Jeffrey, I don't even have access to my own accounts anymore. Mom, his voice took on a patronizing tone. You've been forgetful lately. After Dad died and then your pneumonia. Tiffany mentioned you've been repeating yourself and misplacing things. We're concerned about your memory. My memory is fine, I insisted, stunned by the accusation. Just let Tiffany handle things, okay? She knows what she's doing. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. My own son was dismissing my concerns and suggesting I was mentally declining. It was the first time I felt truly afraid. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice other troubling signs. Small home repairs I had mentioned to Tiffany remained unfixed. The dishwasher stopped working. The roof developed a leak. Each time I brought these issues up, Tiffany would promise to look into it, but nothing was ever done. I tried calling a repairman myself, but when it came time to pay, I realized my credit cards had been canceled. Tiffany had given me a new card with a $500 limit for emergencies only. One afternoon, while looking for a book in my home office, I discovered something disturbing. A small recording device tucked behind some framed photos. It was the kind used for dictation, but it had been placed to capture conversations near my home phone. With shaking hands, I picked it up and pressed play. To my horror, I heard my own voice. Then my friend Martha's, discussing my concerns about Tiffany's control over my finances. The conversation had taken place a week earlier. Tiffany was recording my phone calls. I was still holding the device when the front door opened. Tiffany walked in without knocking, something she had begun doing regularly. Andrea, I brought your groceries for the week. She walked into the office and froze when she saw what I was holding. For a moment, neither of us spoke. What is this, Tiffany? I finally asked, holding up the recording device. Oh, that, she said casually, though I could see tension in her shoulders. Jeffrey asked me to monitor your calls. He's concerned about scammers targeting you. Scammers? The only call on here is between me and Martha. Her expression hardened. We're trying to protect you, Andrea. Frankly, your paranoia is concerning. First, the bank incident. Now accusing me of spying? Jeffrey and I have discussed having you evaluated for early dementia. Dementia? I repeated, shocked. There's nothing wrong with my mind. No? Her voice was cold now. Then why are you making these wild accusations? Why can't you remember the conversations we've had about your finances? If you keep this up, we may need to consider a more structured living arrangement for you. Maybe a facility where you can receive proper care. The threat was clear. If I continued to challenge her control, she would try to have me declared incompetent and placed in a nursing home. I felt a chill run through me. For the first time, I truly understood the danger I was in. That night, I sat alone in my darkening living room, truly afraid. What had started as temporary help during my illness had become something sinister. My daughter-in-law was systematically taking control of my life, and my own son was helping her. I felt confused, betrayed, and increasingly isolated. Who could I turn to when my own family was against me? 6 months later, my situation had deteriorated dramatically. Tiffany had reduced my weekly allowance to $100, claiming unexpected expenses and poor investment returns necessitated budget cuts. This amount was barely enough for basic food, let alone medications or other necessities. I had begun keeping a secret journal, hiding it in different places around the house, documenting everything that was happening. It was the only way I could reassure myself that I wasn't actually losing my mind as Tiffany and Jeffrey suggested. One Tuesday morning, when I attempted to start my car to drive to the pharmacy, it wouldn't turn over. I called Tiffany, who sighed dramatically. Your car is 12 years old, Andrea. It was bound to break down eventually. Can you arrange for it to be repaired? I need my medications refilled. Is it really worth fixing at this point? Cars that old are just money pits. Besides, do you really need to be driving at your age? I'm perfectly capable of driving, I said firmly. I've never had an accident. Well, I'll have to discuss it with Jeffrey. In the meantime, I can pick up your medications on Thursday when I bring your groceries. But Thursday came and went with no sign of Tiffany. My blood pressure medication ran out, and I began to feel lightheaded and unwell. When she finally appeared on Saturday, I was furious. "You said you'd bring my medication on Thursday," I said accusingly. She looked genuinely confused. "Did I? I don't remember that." "You must have misunderstood." I knew I hadn't misunderstood, but arguing was pointless. This was a pattern now. Tiffany would promise something, fail to deliver, then claim I had confused or imagined the conversation. Without my car, I became completely dependent on Tiffany for transportation. She would promise to take me to appointments or social events, then cancel at the last minute with vague excuses. Gradually, I stopped making plans altogether. My world shrank to the confines of my home. One day, desperate to check my financial situation, I walked the 2 miles to my bank, despite the pain in my arthritic knees. The young manager I spoke with, Alicia, seemed uncomfortable when I inquired about my accounts. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, but your daughter-in-law was just here yesterday. She's changed the account structure again and added additional verification requirements. I can't give you any information without her present." "But it's my money," I protested. "Surely I have a right to know about my own accounts." Alicia looked sympathetic but firm. The power of attorney documentation she provided gives her full legal control. My hands are tied. I was walking slowly back home, defeated, when a car pulled up beside me. It was Tiffany, looking furious. "Get in," she commanded. When I was seated, she turned to me with cold eyes. "The bank called me. What do you think you're doing?" "I wanted to check my accounts," I said simply. "I have a right to know about my own money. We've been through this, Andrea. You're becoming obsessive about money. It's not healthy." "Not healthy?" "Tiffany, I don't even know if I can afford to fix my car or repair my leaking roof. My house is falling apart around me." "You're exaggerating," she dismissed. "And honestly, that big house is too much for you now. Jeffrey and I have been discussing whether you should sell it and move somewhere smaller, more manageable." The threat hung in the air. My house, the home I had shared with Harold for 30 years, where we had raised our children, was now at risk. "I'm not selling my home," I said firmly. Tiffany's smile was cold. "We'll see." When we arrived back at my house, I noticed something new, a small camera mounted near my front door. "What's that?" I asked. "Just a security camera," Tiffany said casually. "There have been break-ins reported in the neighborhood. This way we can monitor who comes and goes." Or rather, she could monitor who came and went. I soon discovered there were cameras installed at every entrance to the house. I was becoming a prisoner in my own home. The next week brought another disturbing development. Martha, my closest friend for over 30 years, called to cancel our weekly lunch date. "I'm sorry, Andrea, but I don't think I can make it anymore," she said, her voice oddly formal. "Is everything all right?" I asked. A pause. "Tiffany called me yesterday. She's concerned about your condition. She said you've been having episodes, becoming agitated and confused. She suggested it might be better if you didn't have too much stimulation right now." I was stunned. "Martha, that's not true. I'm perfectly fine." "She said you would deny it," Martha replied sadly. "She said that's part of the condition, that you don't realize when you're having episodes." "Martha, please," I begged. "We've been friends for 30 years. You know me. Do I sound confused to you?" Another long pause. "I don't know what to think, Andrea." Tiffany described some incidents. Things you've supposedly said and done. It sounded serious. "She's lying," I said desperately. "She's trying to isolate me. See? That's exactly what she said you might say, that you're developing paranoid tendencies. I'm sorry, Andrea, but I think it's best if we take a break for a while." The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. One by one, Tiffany was cutting all my connections to the outside world. My bridge club was next. The president, Susan, called to tell me they had decided to pause my membership due to concerns about my health. Then my book club. Even the volunteers at the hospital where I had worked for decades stopped calling. Tiffany had systematically spread rumors about my mental decline throughout my social circle, and people had believed her a young, articulate professional over a confused elderly widow. With no car, limited phone access that I knew was monitored, and no visitors, I was completely isolated. The only person I saw regularly was Tiffany, who now controlled every aspect of my life. I began to wonder if I would ever escape this nightmare. As months passed, my situation deteriorated from controlling to physically dangerous. One morning, I woke to find my cable TV and internet had been disconnected. Unnecessary expenses, Tiffany explained when I called. Your pension isn't unlimited, Andrea. We need to prioritize essentials. But soon, even essentials began to disappear. My food deliveries became increasingly sparse. One week, just some bread, peanut butter, and a few cans of soup. When I complained, Tiffany claimed food prices had increased dramatically. $100 doesn't go as far as it used to, she said. You'll need to budget more carefully. I was losing weight rapidly, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. My health began to suffer. I had developed a heart condition after my bout with pneumonia, requiring daily medication. One day, I realized my prescription bottle was empty. I need my heart medication refilled, I told Tiffany over the phone. I'll take care of it, she promised. But days passed with no medication. When I called again, she claimed she had forgotten. I'll bring it tomorrow, she assured me. Tomorrow came and went. So did the next day, and the next. I began experiencing chest pains and dizziness symptoms my doctor had warned could precede a heart attack. In desperation, I tried to walk to my neighbor's house to ask for help. The Johnsons had lived next door for over 20 years, though we weren't particularly close. I made it halfway down my driveway before the dizziness overwhelmed me. The world tilted sideways, and the ground rushed up to meet me. I don't know how long I lay there before someone found me. I drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of voices, then sirens, then bright lights and the antiseptic smell of a hospital. A nurse was checking my vital signs when I fully regained consciousness. Mrs. Wilson? Can you hear me? You're at Memorial General Hospital. You collapsed in your driveway. My heart medication, I whispered. I ran out. The nurse frowned. How long have you been without your medication? Almost 2 weeks, I admitted. Her frown deepened. That's very dangerous with your condition. And you're severely dehydrated and malnourished. When did you last eat a proper meal? I couldn't remember. Days blurred together when you were hungry all the time. A doctor joined us, along with a woman who introduced herself as Diane Carter, a hospital social worker. Mrs. Wilson, I'm concerned about your condition, the doctor said. Your tests show significant malnourishment and your heart is under considerable strain. Can you tell me about your living situation? Weakly, I began to explain about Tiffany's control, the limited food, the isolation. As I spoke, I saw the doctor and social worker exchange concerned glances. This sounds like elder abuse, Diane said gently. We have resources that can help you. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. These medical professionals could see the truth. They could help me escape Tiffany's control. But that hope was short-lived. The next morning, Tiffany swept into my hospital room, elegantly dressed and wearing an expression of deep concern. Andrea, thank goodness you're all right. I've been so worried. Before I could respond, she turned to the doctor who had accompanied her. Has she been confused? She has these episodes sometimes where she becomes disoriented and forgets to eat or take her medication. I try to check on her daily, but I can't be there every minute. I opened my mouth to protest, but Tiffany continued smoothly. I've brought all her medication. I've been trying to get her to take it, but she sometimes refuses, and she's been so resistant to eating properly, despite the groceries I bring her every week. That's not true, I protested weakly. She only gives me $100 for food each week. My heart medication ran out and she wouldn't refill it. Tiffany gave the doctor a meaningful look. You see what I mean? These paranoid delusions about me controlling her money. Her son and I are just trying to help manage her affairs since she became so forgetful after her husband died. We've been very concerned about her mental state. The doctor nodded sympathetically. That must be difficult for all of you. I couldn't believe what was happening. Tiffany was twisting everything, making me sound like a confused old woman who couldn't take care of herself. And the doctor was believing her. Please, I said desperately. Check my bank records. My pension is $15,000 a month. She's taking all of it. Andrea, Tiffany said with exaggerated patience. We've explained this to you many times. Your pension isn't nearly that much. You're confusing it with your retirement account total. I knew this wasn't true, but doubt crept in. Could I be confused? Was my memory really failing me? No, I reminded myself. I had worked at this very hospital for 40 years. I knew exactly what my pension was. The social worker, Diane, seemed less convinced by Tiffany's performance. She pulled a chair up to my bed. Mrs. Wilson, regardless of the circumstances, you're clearly not getting proper nutrition or taking your medication as prescribed. I'd like to discuss some support options to ensure this doesn't happen again. I've been researching assisted living facilities, Tiffany interjected quickly. Places where Andrea could get the care she needs. No, I said firmly. I want to stay in my own home. Diane nodded. There are many home-based services available. Home health aides, meal delivery, medication management. We'll consider all options, Tiffany said smoothly. I just want what's best for my mother-in-law. The way she said it, with such apparent sincerity, nearly made me doubt my own experiences. Was I the one being unreasonable? Was Tiffany really trying to help me? No. I knew what was happening. I had documented it in my journal, hidden under the loose floorboard in my closet. But how could I prove it to these strangers when Tiffany was so convincing? I was discharged 3 days later, deemed stable but with strict instructions to follow up with my cardiologist. Tiffany drove me home, chatting pleasantly about how we would implement the doctor's recommendations. But once inside my house, her demeanor changed completely. That was quite a performance at the hospital, she said coldly. Accusing me of stealing from you? Do you have any idea how that made me look? It's the truth, I said, too tired to argue forcefully. The truth is that you're becoming a liability, Andrea. Jeffrey and I have been patient, but if you pull something like that again, we'll have to reconsider your living situation. The threat hung in the air between us. I said nothing, conserving my strength. I needed to find a way out of this nightmare, but for now, I had to survive. Tiffany left, promising to return the next day with groceries. I slowly made my way through the house, noticing new cameras had been installed indoors as well. My prison was now under complete surveillance. The next few weeks were slightly better. Apparently concerned that another hospitalization would raise too many questions, Tiffany ensured I had my heart medication and slightly more food. But the isolation continued. The cameras monitored my every move. My phone calls were limited and recorded. And then, the final blow. I received a notice that my electricity would be disconnected for non-payment. When I called Tiffany in a panic, she sighed. I told you we need to economize, Andrea. Electricity is expensive. But it's winter, I protested. I need heat. You have plenty of blankets, she said dismissively. And it's not that cold for February. It was 40 degrees outside. Without heat, the house would become dangerously cold, especially for someone my age with a heart condition. Please, Tiffany, pay the bill. I know there's enough money. I'll see what I can do, she said vaguely. But you really need to adjust your expectations, Andrea. Your pension simply doesn't cover the lifestyle you seem to think you're entitled to. The electricity was shut off the next day. I huddled under blankets, wearing multiple layers of clothing. I had a few candles for light, but they provided little warmth. The food in my refrigerator spoiled. I subsisted on crackers and peanut butter, rationing my meager supplies. Tiffany's visits became less frequent. Sometimes a week would pass without seeing her. My cell phone eventually died with no way to charge it. I was truly alone, sitting in darkness, slowly starving. I began to consider whether death might be preferable to this existence. At least then I would be with Harold again. The thought frightened me. I had never been suicidal before, but I couldn't see any way out of this nightmare. And then, one evening, as I sat in my dark living room, wrapped in blankets and wondering how much longer I could endure, the doorbell rang. The unexpected sound of the doorbell startled me. Few people ever came to my door anymore. Tiffany had her own key, and I had no friends left who visited. Warily, I made my way to the front door, using a small flashlight to navigate the darkened house. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar face that I hadn't seen in years. My daughter, Samantha. With trembling hands, I opened the door. Samantha stood on my porch, her expression shifting from a smile to shock as she took in my appearance and the darkness behind me. "Mom?" she whispered. "What's happening? Why is it so dark in there?" "The electricity was shut off," I admitted, embarrassed for my daughter to see me like this. Samantha stepped inside, her eyes widening as they adjusted to the dim light. She looked around in disbelief, then back at me. I knew what she was seeing, an elderly woman who had lost at least 20 pounds, standing in a cold, dark house. "Mom, why is there no food? You get a $15,000 pension every month." Before I could answer, there was the sound of another car pulling into the driveway. Moments later, Tiffany appeared at the door, stopping short when she saw Samantha. "Samantha," she said, clearly surprised. "We weren't expecting you." "Clearly," Samantha replied coldly. "Would you like to explain why my mother is sitting in a dark house with no food when she has a substantial pension?" Tiffany's surprise gave way to her usual smooth confidence. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Your mother's pension isn't nearly what she's told you," she said. "And she's been having cognitive issues, forgetting to pay bills, refusing to eat properly despite my bringing groceries regularly." "That's not true," I protested. But Tiffany continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Jeffrey and I have been trying to help, but it's been challenging. She refuses assisted living, and home care is expensive. I've been managing her finances as best I can, but there are limits to what we can do." Samantha turned to me. "Is this true, Mom?" "No," I said firmly. "Tiffany has taken control of all my accounts. I have no access to my own money. She gives me $100 a week for everything: food, medication, necessities. It's not enough. The rest of my pension disappears." Tiffany laughed, the sound sharp in the dark room. "You see what I mean? These delusions about her pension. It's sad, really. My pension is $15,000 a month," I insisted. "I was head of nursing administration for 20 years. You can verify it with the hospital." Something shifted in Samantha's expression. She turned to Tiffany, her voice dangerously calm. "I'd like to see her financial records now." Tiffany's smile didn't waver. "Of course, but they're at my house. We can schedule a time for you to review them." "No," Samantha said firmly. "I want to see them now. We'll go to your house." "That's not convenient at the moment," Tiffany replied, her voice cooling. "Besides, I'm not sure what authority you have to demand access to your mother's private financial information." "I control every dollar she receives," Tiffany said with smug confidence. "And legally, there's nothing you can do about it. The power of attorney is ironclad." What happened next stunned me. Samantha calmly removed her earrings, placing them on the small table by the door. It was such an unexpected gesture that both Tiffany and I stared in confusion. "Do you know what I do for a living, Tiffany?" Samantha asked, conversationally. Tiffany frowned. "You're an attorney in California. Corporate law, I believe Jeffrey mentioned." "That was true 3 years ago," Samantha replied. "But for the past 2 years, I've specialized in elder abuse law with a particular focus on financial exploitation." The blood drained from Tiffany's face. "In fact," Samantha continued, reaching into her purse, "I've brought something to show you." She pulled out a thick folder and handed it to Tiffany. "This is a copy of the case I've been building against you for the past 6 months. Bank records showing transfers from my mother's accounts to yours. Credit card statements for purchases you've made with her money. Property records for a vacation home in Lake Tahoe purchased in your name using funds from my mother's accounts." Tiffany's hands shook as she flipped through the documents. "How did you get these?" This is private information. I obtained them legally through discovery for the case I'm preparing, Samantha said calmly. I have a court order. You're bluffing, Tiffany said. But her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Samantha pulled out her phone and played a recording. The old lady has no idea. Tiffany's voice came clearly through the speaker. We've convinced her the pension is much smaller than it is. She gets peanuts while we're banking over $10,000 a month. Another year and we can move her into some dump of a nursing home and sell the house. A male voice, Jeffries responded. Just make sure she doesn't talk to anyone who might question the arrangement. Keep her isolated. Tiffany's face went completely white. You illegally recorded us. That won't be admissible. Actually, Samantha said, this was recorded legally by a third party in a one-party consent state. And it's just the beginning of what I have. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Samantha had been investigating Tiffany for 6 months? But we had barely spoken in years. As if reading my thoughts, Samantha turned to me. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have checked on you much sooner. When Martha finally called me, I couldn't believe what she was telling me. Martha called you? I was confused. But she stopped speaking to me months ago. She believed what Tiffany told her about my condition. At first, Samantha agreed. But something didn't sit right with her. You'd been friends for 3 decades. She knew you. So she did some digging, tried to visit you a few times, but was always turned away by Tiffany. Eventually, she called me. But why didn't you come immediately? I asked. Because I needed evidence, Samantha explained. I could have rushed in, taken you out of here, but Tiffany would have claimed you were mentally incompetent, used the power of attorney to force you back. I needed to build a case that would stand up in court. She turned back to Tiffany, whose smugness had completely vanished. I have enough evidence to have you arrested right now for elder abuse and financial exploitation. The penalties in this state are quite severe, up to 15 years in prison. You wouldn't, Tiffany whispered. Jeffrey is next, Samantha said coldly. His complicity is well documented. Tiffany seemed to collapse in on herself, sinking onto a chair. What do you want? First, you're going to transfer $50,000 to my mother's new account immediately for emergency expenses. Then tomorrow, you'll meet us at the bank and sign documents relinquishing all control over her finances. You'll provide a full accounting of every penny you've taken and a plan for restitution. If you do all that, I might consider recommending leniency to the prosecutor. And if I refuse? Tiffany's voice was barely audible. Then I'll have you arrested tonight. And you can explain to your cellmates how you starved an elderly woman while stealing her pension. For a long moment, the only sound in the dark house was Tiffany's ragged breathing. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll do it. Samantha didn't smile. Good. Get your phone out now. We're making that first transfer immediately. As I watched my daughter take control of the situation, I felt a wave of emotions, relief, gratitude, and overwhelming love. After months of helplessness, someone was finally fighting for me. And not just anyone, my own daughter. Come on, Mom, Samantha said gently after Tiffany had made the transfer. Pack some things. You're staying in my hotel tonight. Tomorrow we start fixing this mess. As I packed a small bag, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next morning, Samantha and I met Tiffany at Pittsburgh First National Bank. The difference in Tiffany's demeanor was striking. Gone was the confident, controlling woman who had terrorized me for over a year. In her place was a subdued, nervous person who couldn't meet my eyes. The bank manager, Scott, seemed relieved to see me looking better than during my previous visit. With Samantha's legal expertise guiding the process, Tiffany signed documents relinquishing her power of attorney and access to all my accounts. Scott provided printouts of all transactions for the past 18 months. When I saw the actual figures, I gasped. My $15,000 monthly pension had indeed been deposited regularly, but most of it had been transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. Where did all this money go? I asked, pointing to the largest transfers. Tiffany stared at the floor. Investment accounts. In whose name? Samantha pressed. After a long pause, Tiffany whispered, "Mine and Jeffrey's." The total misappropriated funds came to over $200,000. And that didn't include the unauthorized credit cards opened in my name, the missed insurance payments that had been forgotten, or the utility bills left unpaid, while my pension money funded Tiffany and Jeffrey's lifestyle. "You'll provide a complete accounting by tomorrow," Samantha instructed Tiffany. "Every penny, and a proposal for full restitution." Tiffany nodded silently. As we left the bank, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in over a year, I had control of my own money again. "The electricity should be restored by this afternoon," Samantha told me as we drove to her hotel. "And I've arranged for a cleaning service to come tomorrow. Your house needs a thorough cleaning after being without power for so long." "Thank you," I said, feeling overwhelmed by her efficiency and care. "But Samantha, I don't understand. We've barely spoken in years. Why did you go to such lengths to help me?" Samantha was quiet for a moment, hands tight on the steering wheel. "That's a conversation we need to have. But not until you've had a proper meal and some rest." At the hotel, I took my first hot shower in weeks. Samantha had bought me new clothes, and after dressing, I felt almost human again. We ordered room service, a feast of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and chocolate cake for dessert. I hadn't eaten so well in months, though I had to be careful not to overdo it after so long with so little. After dinner, we sat in the comfortable hotel suite, and Samantha took a deep breath. "Mom, I owe you an explanation and an apology." "For what?" I asked. "For staying away. For not checking on you more after Dad died. For letting things get so bad. You had your own life," I said. "Your career in California." She shook her head. "That's not why I stayed away. The truth is, I was angry. For years, I believed that you and Dad favored Jeffrey. He was the golden child, following in your footsteps into medicine. I was just the lawyer. We were always proud of you," I protested. "I know that now," she said quietly. "But back then, it felt different. And then when Dad died, I wanted you to move to California, to be near me. When you chose to stay near Jeffrey instead, it reinforced all those old feelings." "Oh, Samantha," I said, my heart breaking. "I didn't stay because I preferred Jeffrey. I stayed because this was my home with your father. Our memories were here." "I understand that now," she said. "But at the time, I just felt rejected. So I threw myself into my work, changed my specialty to elder law after seeing so many cases of exploitation, and tried to pretend I wasn't hurt." "And then Martha called you?" Samantha nodded. "She said something wasn't right, that you weren't answering her calls, that Tiffany always seemed to be monitoring your conversations, that you seemed afraid. So you started investigating?" "Yes." At first, I thought Martha might be exaggerating, but the more I dug, the more alarmed I became. Bank records showing large transfers out of your accounts. Credit cards opened in your name with billing addresses at Tiffany's house. A vacation property purchased just months after Jeffrey moved to Seattle. "Why didn't you call me directly?" I asked. "I tried, several times. But Tiffany always answered, saying you were resting or at an appointment. Eventually, I realized she was screening your calls. That's when I knew I needed to build a solid legal case before confronting her. If I'd come without evidence, she could have claimed you were incompetent and prevented me from helping." I reached for my daughter's hand. "Thank you for coming when you did. I don't know how much longer I could have lasted." Tears filled Samantha's eyes. "I'm so sorry it took me so long. Can you forgive me?" "There's nothing to forgive," I assured her. "You saved my life." The next morning brought a new challenge. Jeffrey called Samantha's phone, demanding to speak with me. "He's coming back from Seattle," Samantha told me after the call. "He claims he had no idea what Tiffany was doing, that she acted alone." "Do you believe him?" I asked. "No," Samantha said firmly. "I have evidence of his involvement. Text messages, emails, recorded conversations. He knew exactly what was happening and encouraged it." My heart ached at the confirmation of my son's betrayal. Why would he do this? What did I ever do to deserve such treatment from my own child? Samantha's expression softened. I don't think it was about anything you did, Mom. Some people just make bad choices. Selfish choices. The meeting with Jeffrey was scheduled for that afternoon at my house, where the electricity had been restored and a cleaning service had made significant progress. When Jeffrey arrived, his expression was a mixture of concern and indignation. Mom, he said, moving to embrace me. I stepped back, unwilling to accept his touch. He frowned. What's going on? Tiffany's not making any sense. She says Samantha is threatening legal action? Drop the act, Jeffrey, Samantha said coldly. We know you were fully aware of and involved in Tiffany's exploitation of Mom. That's ridiculous, he blustered. I was in Seattle. Tiffany was helping Mom with her finances because she was having memory issues. There are no memory issues, I said firmly. There never were. That was a story you and Tiffany created to justify taking control of my money. Mom, you don't understand, Jeffrey began. Actually, I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You and Tiffany systematically isolated me, gaslighted me, and stole from me. You left me in a cold, dark house with inadequate food and medication. I could have died, Jeffrey. Your own mother. For a moment, Jeffrey continued to protest his innocence. But when Samantha produced copies of text messages between him and Tiffany discussing how to handle me and what to do with the money, his denials collapsed. You don't understand, he said, his voice changing from indignant to pleading. We never meant for it to go so far. It started small, just borrowing a little to help with some debts. But then you got greedy. Samantha finished for him. A little became a lot, and you convinced yourselves Mom didn't need or deserve her own money. She has so much, Jeffrey said defensively. $15,000 a month for one old woman living alone? It wasn't fair. After everything Tiffany and I did for her, what exactly did you do for me? I asked, genuinely curious about how he justified his behavior. Jeffrey looked uncomfortable. We checked on you, brought groceries, handled your finances so you wouldn't have to worry about it. You stole from me, I corrected. You isolated me from my friends. You left me hungry and cold and afraid. It wasn't supposed to be like that, he insisted. Tiffany took things too far. And you let her, I said. You encouraged her. Your own mother, Jeffrey. How could you? He had no answer. Just excuses and self-justification. Here's what's going to happen, Samantha said. All business now. You and Tiffany will return every penny you took, with interest. You'll sign legal documents acknowledging what you did and agreeing to restitution. If you comply fully and immediately, we might consider not pressing criminal charges. Criminal charges? Jeffrey repeated, paling. You would send your own brother to prison? You would steal from and endanger your own mother? Samantha countered. You're a doctor, Jeffrey. You took an oath to do no harm. Yet you deliberately put Mom's health and life at risk for money. What did you think would happen when she had no heat, no food, no medication? I didn't know it had gotten that bad, he claimed. Tiffany said everything was fine. You could have checked, I pointed out. You could have called me directly instead of always going through Tiffany. You could have visited. I was busy, he said lamely. The new position in Seattle was part of the plan, Samantha interrupted. Distance yourself physically while leaving Tiffany to handle the dirty work. Very convenient. Jeffrey had no response. He looked broken, caught in his own web of deceit and selfishness. Why? I asked simply. I need to understand why my own son would do this to me. Jeffrey was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I always felt you loved Samantha more. She was the smart one, the special one. I was just there. I was stunned. That's not true. We loved you both equally. It didn't feel that way, he said bitterly. Dad spent more time with her, teaching her things. You were always bragging about her accomplishments. We bragged about both of you, I insisted. We were proud of both our children. Well, it didn't feel that way to me, Jeffrey repeated. And then when Dad died and left everything to you instead of splitting it between us. That's what this was about? Samantha asked incredulously. Revenge because Mom inherited Dad's assets? It should have been divided, Jeffrey insisted. We're their children. We deserve to share. That was your father's decision, I said quietly. And everything would have eventually been divided between you both when I died. You knew that. Eventually wasn't soon enough, Jeffrey admitted. Tiffany and I had debts. The house in Seattle was expensive. We needed money now. The naked selfishness of his admission left me speechless. This was my son, the boy I had raised, the man who had become a doctor to help others, now revealed as someone willing to harm his own mother for financial gain. Get out, I said finally. Get out of my house. Mom, I need time, Jeffrey. I don't know if I can ever forgive this. Right now, I need you to leave. He looked to Samantha, perhaps hoping for an ally, but her expression was equally unforgiving. Defeated, he turned and left. When the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, overwhelmed by the confirmation of my son's betrayal. Are you all right? Samantha asked gently, sitting beside me. No, I admitted, but I will be. Thanks to you. The legal proceedings moved swiftly, thanks to Samantha's expertise and preparation. Within a week, we had a court hearing where a judge reviewed the evidence of financial exploitation and immediately restored full control of my assets to me. Tiffany and Jeffrey were ordered to provide a complete accounting of all funds taken and to begin restitution immediately. The judge was appalled by the evidence, Samantha explained as we drove home from court. Especially the medical records showing your hospitalization for malnutrition and heart issues while they were spending your money on luxury items. Will they go to prison? I asked, conflicted about my feelings toward my son despite his betrayal. That depends on the criminal proceedings, Samantha said. The district attorney is reviewing the case. They'll decide whether to press charges. And if they do, financial exploitation of an elder is a felony in this state, she explained. Particularly when it results in physical harm. They could face significant prison time. I nodded slowly. The thought of my son in prison was painful, but so was the memory of sitting alone in the dark, hungry and cold, while he lived comfortably on my money. It's your decision, Mom, Samantha said gently. If you don't want to pursue criminal charges, we can focus solely on the financial restitution. I considered this carefully. If I don't press charges, what message does that send? That it's acceptable to abuse an elderly parent as long as you eventually return the money when caught? No. There have to be consequences. Real ones. Samantha squeezed my hand. I think that's the right decision. Difficult, but right. Over the next few weeks, we worked to rebuild my life. The utilities were fully restored, and needed repairs to my home were finally made. A new roof. A functional dishwasher. Fresh paint. My car was fixed, giving me back my independence. With Samantha's help, I implemented new financial safeguards. My pension payments now went into a new account at a different bank. I had a financial advisor who provided regular, transparent reports. And most importantly, I had regained my confidence in managing my own affairs. Martha was the first of my friends to come back, tearfully apologizing for believing Tiffany's lies. I should have known better, she said as we sat in my newly brightened living room. You've been my friend for 30 years. I should have trusted that. Tiffany was very convincing, I acknowledged. And she deliberately played on fears about dementia and aging. Still, I'm so sorry I didn't do more, sooner. I forgave Martha, though our relationship would need time to fully heal. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight. Gradually, other friends returned as well. My bridge club welcomed me back. My book group. The volunteer coordinators at the hospital. As the true story spread, people were horrified by what had happened to me. I had no idea, Susan from the bridge club admitted. Tiffany seemed so concerned, so caring. She had us all fooled. There was one unexpected outcome of my ordeal. As my story became known in the community, other elderly people began reaching out, sharing similar experiences of financial exploitation by family members. Some had been too ashamed or afraid to speak up. "You're not alone in this," I told one woman who called me in tears after her son had emptied her bank account. "And there are resources to help." Inspired by these conversations, and with some of the funds recovered from Tiffany and Jeffrey, I established the Wilson Elder Protection Foundation. Our mission was to raise awareness about elder financial abuse and provide resources for victims. Samantha served as our legal advisor, offering pro bono services to seniors in crisis. The criminal case against Tiffany and Jeffrey proceeded despite their attempts to negotiate lesser charges. The evidence was simply too overwhelming. In the end, Tiffany accepted a plea deal for 10 years in prison, while Jeffrey, who had been less directly involved in the day-to-day abuse, received 6 years. The day of their sentencing, I delivered a victim impact statement to the court. I spoke not just for myself, but for all elderly people who had been exploited by those they trusted. "When you reach my age, you expect certain hardships," I told the hushed courtroom. "The loss of loved ones, health challenges, the adjustments that come with aging. What you don't expect is to be betrayed by your own child, to be left hungry and cold while your pension finances someone else's luxury, to be told that you're confused, crazy, incompetent when you know you're not. That psychological abuse is almost worse than the financial theft." I looked directly at Jeffrey as I continued. "I raised you to be compassionate, to care for those in need. You became a doctor, sworn to help others. Yet you participated in the systematic abuse of your own mother. I may eventually forgive you, but I will never forget what you did." My statement was recorded and later went viral on social media, bringing national attention to the issue of elder financial abuse. I received letters from all over the country, from victims and their advocates, thanking me for speaking out. Samantha, true to her word, relocated her law practice to Pittsburgh to be near me. She purchased a home not far from mine, though we both valued our independence too much to live together. "I'm not ready to retire yet," she told me over dinner one evening. "There are too many elderly people being exploited who need legal representation, but I want to be close enough to have dinner with you regularly." "I'd like that," I said, smiling at my daughter whose courage and determination had saved me. 6 months after Samantha had found me sitting in darkness, I hosted a dinner party in my fully restored home. Martha was there, and Susan from the Bridge Club, and several neighbors who had become friends. The house was warm, brightly lit, and filled with laughter. As I looked around at the people gathered in my dining room, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the depths of isolation and fear to this moment of community and joy, I had survived. More than that, I had reclaimed my life and found purpose in helping others avoid what I had experienced. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To true family, the people who stand by us, who fight for us, who see us clearly and love us anyway. Sometimes those people share our blood, and sometimes they don't. What matters isn't the relation, but the love and respect shown through actions." Everyone raised their glasses. "To true family," they echoed. Later, as the evening wound down, Samantha pulled me aside. "Are you happy, Mom?" she asked. I considered the question seriously. "I am. Not despite what happened, but partly because of it. I discovered my own strength. I reconnected with you. I found a new purpose. And I learned a valuable lesson about trusting my instincts when something feels wrong. I'm proud of you," Samantha said, hugging me. "You're the strongest person I know." "I get it from my daughter," I replied, hugging her back. Looking back on everything I'd endured, I realized that the darkest times can indeed reveal our greatest strengths. I had been victimized, but I refused to remain a victim. Instead, I had become an advocate, a survivor, a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. And that, perhaps, was the most valuable pension of all. Have you ever known someone who was taken advantage of by family members? What warning signs did you notice? I hope my story helps others recognize the red flags of elder financial abuse before it goes too far. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Together, we can protect our most vulnerable citizens from those who would exploit them. Thank you for listening, and I wish you and your loved ones safety, security, and true family bonds built on respect and love.